Oh, but I saw a thing this morning on social media. Zabit, we'll just call him that, and Jeremy Stevens, which is going to be a great fight, by the way.
Yeah.
We're trying to get at each other. And then one of the UFC employees was having to get between them. So a little bit of bad blood.
How
maybe,
real is that, though?
Kinda...
I don't think that's real because I feel like if these are professional fighters, if they really wanted to get at each other, is there any UFC official that's going to really be able to stave them off? No.
Well, for one, this was a woman, which actually helps in that situation. If it's a man, you'd be like, and you're really going to fight?
Excuse
man
me,
in
sir.
The way, it's like, hey, listen, if you're going to get involved, it's like if two dogs are fighting and you try and break them up, you might get bitten on your hand. And you know what? That's your fault for fucking getting involved. And if you're a man and two professional fighters are trying to get at each other and you're going to be the hero and jump in, you might get clipped. You might get a little jab. You know, you might get a little headbutt. You know what I mean? It's all fair game. But if there's a woman involved, you're like, all right, okay, we can't do this. So it's better when it's a woman. And to answer your question, how real is that? When things like that happen, and I used to have my fair share over the years, you see them in the hotel room, in the hotel lobby or in the UFC when you're checking in the offices. There's a whole thing. When you get there on the Tuesday, you got a ton of paperwork to sign. You got to sign your medical stuff. You got to sign your insurance stuff. You got to sign your contract. You got to sign a ton of posters. You got to sign liability waivers and all kinds of stuff, you know. So you're doing that, and then they give you your per diem, so you get your cash for the week, so you can buy lunch for your cornermen and stuff like that, and then you get given your PR schedule, and you know, so there's a ton of paperwork when you check in for a UFC fight, and they have a lot of employees, so there'll be multiple fighters in the room checking in with different officials at once, and then sometimes there may be your opponent there. And, you know, you'll catch a little glance and you'll look at him and you're like, you know, you might puff your chest out a little bit, make yourself look a little bigger. You know, it's just things you do because, you know, you're going to fight and you want to try and get that little mental edge. So you're not going to fight. You're not going to fight. But if you catch each other's, if you make eye contact, one of you might say, you know, what the fuck are you looking at? So then you respond, say, what the fuck are you looking at? You know, and then like, you don't want to back down. And honestly, no one's going to fight. You know what I mean? I mean, it has happened once or twice, but generally neither of them
is the one.
Jones and Cormier, Diaz, you know, he was known for that at times, but generally you're not going to actually throw down and get into a fight, but you like to portray that you would, because you want to let your guy know, hey, listen, I'm a little batshit crazy and I'll go there. I'll throw down in this fucking hotel room right now. Or this whole, you know what I'm saying?
So fight. I don't care about the money. I'll fight you right now, motherfucker.
There's a weird psychological thing. You're trying to get a psychological edge. You know, you're trying to intimidate your opponent. Basically, essentially, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get a little intimidation factor prior to the fight.
It's kind of crazy, though, right? When you step back and it's kind of a crazy thing, like the way that men, not just fighters, but men sort of have to puff themselves up and talk shit the way that they talk shit. And then you kind of see it in the fight game and you go like, dudes just turn into dudes. Whatever it happens, that adrenaline kicks in and they just turn into two kids in a schoolyard again and they just start barking at each other. And it doesn't matter that they make a lot of money, the cameras are on. It just kind of goes there and it goes down that path. It's very interesting.
Well, it's the animalistic nature of the animal kingdom. I mean, human beings, that's what we are. We're animals that have just highly developed and now we're intelligent. I mean, look at dogs. I mean, my dog, Alfie, is a big, giant German Shepherd. He is the softest fucking dog ever. He's so scared. I was on the Peloton bike before and I was going, because I was like really pushing at the end. And he was terrified. When I got off, he was all scared because he thinks I'm screaming, I'm shouting. He's the pussiest dog ever. Ellie, like most nights, me and Rebecca are in bed by 9 p.m. We're in bed. We're not asleep, but we get in bed and we watch some Netflix or whatever, you know. Ellie might come in a little bit later and she'll walk in, the door goes beep, beep every time a door opens because it's a half mansion, so we don't know, we can't see. So it alerts us that someone's entered. And Alfie shits his pants and he won't go downstairs.
Wait a minute, somebody's entered the West Wing.
Yes. Somebody's, according to my GPS tracker, somebody's at one of the many doors. No, and then Ellie walks upstairs to go to bed, and Alfie is barking and terrified, and he won't approach it. It's just a little girl. But the point that I'm making is, but still, what he does is puts his hackles up, makes himself as big as possible. That's what all animals do. They make themselves look as big, as intimidating. Just like is it male or male peacocks? They show their feathers and all that. In the animal kingdom, that's what they do. They try to make themselves look as big as possible. And the same thing with guys, that animalistic, those little nuances from back in the day when we were fucking cavemen, barbarians, or whatever we were doing. It comes out and we puff our chests out and we get a little big and we try and, get the intimidation factor,
Yeah. It's funny. I guess it was that time that Rogan talked about not wanting to interview guys. I guess it was after the Alistair Overeem knockout. He was talking about
when he got knocked out, yeah.
Yeah, and just sort of like, it should almost be the same thing. Like, they shouldn't allow cameras on these guys right before, like, because these fighters are gonna say something that they regret, undoubtedly, and especially in today's day and age, everyone like scrutinizes everything you guys say. It's almost like refreshing to see how well behaved the UFC guys have sort of played it. They really got everyone to sort of be in line and play a very mainstream game with not a very mainstream sport.
Oh, well, I mean, as the sport's got bigger, it's definitely got more corporate, but that's just the way it is. That's the way it rolls. When it was a small show, 5 shows a year, and it was a very small team in Las Vegas, and they had their, it was a small roster of fighters, your Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddells, Pat Miletich, Matt Hughes, and they had this small little roadshow they would take around. Yeah, that was okay. They could be a little bit more edgy. But now you're dealing with mainstream sponsors, you know what I mean? You've got like Bud Light and God knows what. I mean, the UFC's covered in sponsors. Reebok, for crying out loud. They got over 500 fighters on the roster. They're in almost all countries all over the world. They got offices in China, UK, Brazil, you name it. They're bloody everywhere. They're going to St. Petersburg, Russia soon. So, when it comes to that level and there's that much scrutiny, and in this modern day and age, they got to do that. That's just par for the course. It really is. It's not a negative thing. I think it's a good thing.
Oh, I agree.
We should be held accountable. Yeah,
well,
we should.
As the sport's gotten bigger, it definitely that overall, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean, we're doing a podcast right now that is very popular, has a very large following, has thousands and thousands of people that download it.
Big.
No, I mean, it legitimately is. Like, we make good money off this podcast and has a very big following. That's only because the UFC was able to become as mainstream as it's become, because if it was still a small sport that was considered niche and still considered underground and fucking hardcore and blood and barbed wire and cages, I think we would not have anywhere near the opportunity to do what we do. And I say that not just us, but, hundreds of probably podcasters, broadcasters, people that work in the MMA media, probably 1,000 UFC employees, however many people they employ, backstage, production people. It's a pretty, incredible thing. So nobody can really complain about the sport growing larger and getting more mainstream, because it legitimately puts money in our pocket.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because the diehard MMA fans, that they think it's cool. Oh, I was watching this shit back in the day. They like to bitch and complain about that stuff. They do. They think it's not cool, but you're absolutely right. It's a good thing. It's a sign that the sport is growing. It's getting a wider acceptance. And therefore, we're accountable. We're held to a higher standard of social behavior, which is the way it should be in this day and age. But anyway, so...